Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my show. Autumn is here. I'm Francine Crawford. I'm your host. And today we're going to talk about some legal issues and some things that may help you as you grow older or as you're in your senior years. You don't have to start them then. You can do them right now. You can get your things in order right now. We're going to speak to an attorney. So let's welcome Attorney Wayne Bodden to the show. Hello, Wayne.
Hi, how are you? Good evening and hope all is well. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad that you were able to make some time to be here this evening. Can you just tell me a little bit about your profession and how long you've been in this profession?
All right. So I passed the bar 35 years ago, right about now. and so I've been practicing. September will make 35 years. I primarily practice in the criminal defense area, which has been sort of my specialty, but I have a general practice. So I do some wills and estates, but they're mostly for what I would call smaller estates, simple wills.
Uh-huh.
And I do a reasonable amount of real estate. And then every now and then something will pop up that I'll have an interest in. But mostly I'm always interested in the community. So I appreciate people like yourself, hopefully not asking me to spread the word, but reinforcing the word that, we need to prepare ourselves and take care of ourselves. And, if you drive around certain neighborhoods, almost every abandoned house is an estate problem. That's a house that used to be something that was transferred not in the most efficient way and then succumb to society.
Wow. Well, now tell us about that. Like how, what things we need to get in order as we get older, like what kind of paperwork? I know you talk about living wills and different things like that, estate wills. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, sure. So there are a lot more than what people, think of in terms of an estate. It can get very complicated, and generally working people don't think they'll be in the complicated category. Mm-hmm. So they, whether it's budgetary reasons or just, again, self-doubt reasons almost, if they do something, they do it very simple. So just do a last will and testament. But that's not estate planning.
Oh, okay.
It's somewhat of an estate planning, but that's not planning to the extent that you're looking at all the issues that encompass an estate. So, the area is called, estates. It's not called wills. You know what I'm saying? It's not called last wills. That's a section in the estates, powers, and trusts area, which the lawyers who practice estates, powers, and trusts. So within that area, you have, again, last wills and testaments, powers of attorney with gift writers, living trusts, supplemental needs planning, healthcare proxies, and living wills, which are very close together, along with your HIPAA authorizations, statements of intent, disposition of remains, nomination of guardians, and living transfers of deeds, life estates, and things like that. So already you see it's not just wills to plan an estate. And everyone at a certain level needs to understand estate planning is just like, if you send a child to college or high school, to better prepare them for the future. Well, planning your estate is better preparing, in this case, probably them for the future in terms of what's going to happen.
Oh, okay. So exactly what is like a living trust as opposed to just a will?
Okay. So I give you probably the most common example. When an elderly person falls ill and has to have their needs met in a facility. Mm-hmm. There's a 5-year look back period. Okay. So what that means is if you transferred your house within 60 months, they're like, nah, that don't count. you have you have an asset.
Mm-hmm.
So that impacts that eligibility for Medicaid and assistance. So now you run the risk of the house paying for health care
Okay.
and at a facility. And no matter how much no one likes those facilities, they're very expensive. Even the ones we, talk bad about as being, like a death trap and words like that. They're very expensive.
Right. Right.
All right. So they'll go through, and there's some restrictions, which again, you would speak to an expert about, but just generally the concept is that becomes attachable with a 60-month look back period.
Okay.
And
that's when people should, prior to that, start gifting and things like that.
Well, either gifting or living trust. A trust, which was your question, I'm sorry, is creating like an account that, again, in this example would be more, I'm creating a trust for you to take care of me. So I'm transferring this and your obligation is all of these things.
Okay.
All right. Now, the person, with the trust actually becomes the owner and the responsible party, but they have a contractual obligation.
Mm-hmm.
It gets sketchy where, they don't fulfill the contract to the best of their abilities, but fulfill it enough. And, that goes into who's being chosen, which like anything else is imperfect, but it generally, not always, but generally is going to be better than letting the government choose.
Right.
Right. So, because if you pass without making your plans, then the law, that same estates laws do come into play, but it's like whether it's family court and there being child support guidelines, where I would imagine most people want to take care of their children to the best of their ability.
Okay.
Not 17%, or whatever that number is.
Right. So when you put in a living trust, what happens after that? What happens if you pass away? If you still have assets, does that asset?
No, well, the trust, you would have gave the assets would have been in trust, and that would already have been pre-planned.
Okay, so you don't have to do anything after that.
Right, because it won't be part of your estate.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So it won't transfer through the estate.
It won't transfer through the estate. Okay.
Right. See, what the experts are going to do for people, and as I was mentioning, a lot of people, the more people eligible than they think, is advise a person how to best shelter their assets so that they're not in danger of government intervention, whether it's through something like Medicaid, through estate taxes, and things of that nature. So there are, a lot of different ways. It's common to transfer something to a child. That's a little dangerous because you have to trust that child, and depending on that child's status, because if you transfer it to the child and the child is married and the child gets divorced, it can be part of that, which, in divorces, families, are divided very often, right? So that's something to be aware of. So that's why a more evolved estate planning is what I would suggest.
Okay. So what is a power of attorney?
All right. So a power of attorney is someone authorizing another person or persons to act on their behalf. And that lasts up until death. Okay. So I can say, sign a document, a proper power of attorney, saying Francine Prophet has the power to act on my behalf. And then I could be very specific. Okay. So sometimes, let's say at a closing, you know, in an estate, a second parent passes, leaves the five kids, three of whom have relocated. They can execute powers of attorneys for the two who are still local to act on their behalf at the closing,
Okay. Okay.
to sign the transfer documents at the closing.
So it could be more than one person?
Yeah, so you can have power to act separately, powers to act individually, powers that say majority or 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3 rules.
Okay.
And then again, you could limit them. So an example of a power of attorney that people never associate is in essence, when you take a notarized letter to DMV saying my son can register the car. That's a power. That's a very limited power of attorney.
Okay.
Saying he or she can register the car or whatever it may be. But that's in essence what a power of attorney is. He or she can pick up a document for me. Now, when you go into the bank, they want to see a power of attorney, but DMV takes a notarized letter, which again, in so many ways, is a power of attorney.
Okay. Okay. Well, and there are different wills that have to do with health. Like if you take sick and someone has to make a decision for you or something like that. What is that?
All right. So living wills and healthcare proxies have to do with your care if you become incapacitated to make decisions for yourself. So you're saying to the person or persons you're giving it to, this is what I want done. So if I'm on a vent longer than 2 days, take me off.
Okay.
If I lose brain functions, take me off. No more chemo. At a certain, things like that. Like, if the only choice is chemo, let me go.
Okay. Okay.
And things of that nature. Those are some real life examples, but that's the general idea.
Okay. For living wills and healthcare proxies.
Healthcare proxies, right. They're telling the hospital, if I become incapacitated, this person makes the decision. Okay. Just think of a parent with a child. Doctors come to you what to do with your child. And a parent says, surgery, no surgery. And that's what it will. Here, generally, it's do not resuscitate. DNR is, the hospital word, right? DNR. Right. It's a DNR, right? So,
right. Oh, okay.
And you could send it to the hospital. A person can tell a hospital itself, DNR. Then you sign that form before a procedure if you don't have family.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Always separate, because a lot of people don't. An executor is the person in charge. That's not always the person who benefits. Okay. The most, per se. A lot of times it is, but that's not a rule. Executor is just saying this person makes the decision. So I wouldn't be able to do the will, but a friend, let's say, can say, my kids are still immature, Wayne. If I pass, I want you to be the executor, manage the property, and split it between them equally.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Which is sort of saying to me, take care of, I know you can manage a house.
Right.
My kids don't want any part of that. They just want to know the split. And if you leave it to them, they're just going to say, sell it, and be happy to take 10,000 each versus whatever to get them 23,000 each. I just made up a number, but it's the same spirit.
Well, within that, now like our neighborhoods, the houses are worth so much more, and people don't realize how much more their, how their wealth is. Like people haven't really assessed their wealth. They're so used to living a certain way. So now it's really important for people to get, things in order. But there are also people that are, I guess you would say, looking to purchase your house for less than it's worth, and things like that have happened to seniors. I've heard of stories like that, houses that are already paid for, that people are coming to try to at least, or get them into another kind of a mortgage or something that is not beneficial to them. Are you aware of things like that? And can you speak?
Yes, and I've never heard a good story out of one of those, phone calls, flyers, door-to-door people. I've never heard anyone happy.
Yeah.
So that I can't give a stronger recommendation to not do something like that. More than I've never seen anyone happy after that process. The assets in so many communities now are increasing. Matter of fact, I talked to someone today, a retired transit worker with a home in Bedford-Stuyvesant that's very well kept, little to no mortgage, and he actually called me on this subject, and I'm like, "You got too much money for me," because again, he doesn't fundamentally think of himself as elite. He doesn't dress in what society would think is in a millionaire, like a millionaire.
Right.
He doesn't drive a millionaire's car, as society would say a millionaire. Well, I would estimate his home to be 1.5 to 1.7, no more than a $200,000 mortgage, if that.
Mm-hmm.
So that means his assets in that home he's leaving, 1.3 to 1.5 at this point, and he's 58. So it will only grow. Just give him another, 20 years, I figure 3 million and change.
Wow.
At least, so you're planning now in case, but it'll be covered until you revoke it.
Oh, okay.
Unless you revoke it or supplement it with a codicil, which is just an amendment that controls after your will. More or less the same requirements.
Okay. I know you're a criminal attorney, but I've been talking to people, and when I interview them, and their parents have gotten dementia and things like that, one of the first things they said, that how they noticed that things were off or different, was because of they have sent all this money. They have all this mail, and they've sent all this money to these different places, and people have sent thousands of dollars. Their children have found out after the fact, and they some of them are still trying to get it back. But do you know anything about that? Like, do people get that back, or is there anything that protects against that?
It's very hard to get back because most of the places doing these things are not around long enough to sue. So they're doing, very quick hitters, if I can call it that. And then they accumulate, and then they're gone. From what I've seen. Again, I think just for seniors, and it can be a very hard discussion because, a lot of people are still, money under the mattress mentality. And they're not, trusting of kids, banks, and things like that. But, I try to tell them, well, it's where we live. So I'm not going to be a blanket endorsement for banks and government, but it's more of an endorsement than the mattress.
Right.
Or, self-medicating and things like that. So, to the extent you want to put in some checks and balances. When my dad was alive, my brother put something at the bank that, and my dad allowed it, would notified my brother, who was local, to where my dad lived. And he would get notified for certain types of transactions. And he was able to stop a couple.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Because what they'll do, the crooks are smart. My clients sometimes they know how to prey on certain things. So, like, for example, my mom allowed long time ago everything to be transferred and managed by me. But if she was still in control of her assets, and somebody called and said, Wayne is in trouble, send money, it's gone. It is not like any filter process. You say those magic words, it is card number 454.
Right.
You say Wayne's in trouble now. She says, okay, and has to call me because she can't, she'll need me to write the check. And so it's right. So, it's self-regulating. But if you can, there are within the institutions things you could put in place to try to alert and flag certain transactions.
Okay. Are you aware of any community organizations or anything like that may help in legal matters and things like that?
Yeah, well, I don't know them offhand, but there are more community resources than people think. There's bar associations with areas, and again, a lot of these guys will look for business. So you can't undo the human in this process, and to some extent, you can't undo the fact that it costs. One of the things that people suffer from in general is that sometimes you got to spend money to both protect money and or make money.
Right.
And that's that goes on entirely too much.
Right. So it's worth investing some money now than losing a lot later.
Again, your analogy is college, which is too darn expensive since I was in college. However, it pays off most of the time. Right.
Okay. So is there anything else that you would offer or give any advice to somebody that's watching that wants to know anything about legal stuff or anything that you may know that you think that they should be aware of?
Well, most important, is to reach out, use your community, use your resources, and check them. Like, again, sometimes we lose our intelligence. We know to get 3 estimates for a plumber or a carpenter, but we only go to one bank. Like, how many people switch banks?
Right. You don't. Right.
The way you switch, but you call Verizon every year to upgrade. Right?
True.
You got a boatload of money in the bank that you never check on, but you want a new phone.
Right.
So the diligence exists. It just has to be put to the proper places.
Thank you very much for your input and all your advice. People have been asking me. Matter of fact, someone just asked me again about different kind of wills. Can you talk about that more? So I'm glad that you were able to come back and give us some information on that, and just to be able to. I'm glad that you're someone that's in the community that's helping others, even though some of your clients are criminals, but it's okay. It's okay. Well, somebody has to defend them.
And but it just, any will is better than no will for the most part. All right. So even if it's a non-tax sheltered will, which is not, it's 3 pieces of paper. when one of them is a signature page. So it's like 4 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs. And 4 of them are required by law. So you only have 2 or 3 paragraphs of content. It's still better than, or usually better than leaving it into, the la la land.
So do you do this? Can you do this on your own? Like, can you download wills or something? Or
So the requirements in New York are really not, that much. It's 2 witnesses and a notary, basically, and that's it.
That's it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now that'll stand. It doesn't have all the necessary language, and it's better to follow whether it's a kit or a lawyer.
Okay.
Like everything else, the more you usually, not everything, usually you can do it yourself and get it done, but usually not as good as somebody who does it, and not as good as somebody who's an expert in it. Right. So I can probably do better than the average person, and in the States person, whose career is 95% estates will do better than me.
Oh, okay.
But depending on the estate, it may not matter.
Okay. There's one thing I came across. What about contesting? People always talk about that. Now, I don't know if it's just TV or what, but people just talk about contesting a will. Is that something that is just freely to do? Anybody can come up and contest it?
Anybody with a legitimate claim. So for the most part, a child who feels left out can contest.
Okay.
A spouse who wasn't left the statutory minimums easily can contest.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain triggers to contest. Other times it's just sore. The biggest test, and unfortunately it does happen, is if you have siblings with more influence. Mm-hmm. That, and as dementia and those things set in, they, get the parent propped up in a way to say everything, again, it's not unique. Most people feel they work the hardest, they deserve the most. And sometimes when you have, like a child remaining at home, maybe they do deserve more, 40, 30, 30, but sometimes it's like, 80, 10, 10, which might be an extreme.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate all your information. I appreciate you for spending some time with us this evening and just sharing some of us information with us, because, my show is Autumn is Here, because we tend not to think that, our days are growing. We tend to, our numbers are going up, and we think that we're going to be the same, and we're not. We're going to change just like the season changes. So thank you again. I appreciate your time. Okay.
Oh, you're very welcome. And preparation always works.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, good night.
Good night.